Archie, we all want a worry-free retirement.
And we've got levers that give us control. Let's dive in. I'm Archie Hoxton.
And I'm Rob Hoxton.
And this is Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. Welcome to Last Paycheck for our second episode. I'm Archie Hoxton, your host.
I'm Rob Hoxton.
Today we're going to talk about retiring without worrying about going broke. So, you know...
Is that possible?
A lot of people ask that question now. We get, hey, we want to retire, but I don't want to be eating cat food the rest of my life. We get that a lot. And our big thing that we always say, we talk about a lot, is that we help a lot of people retire. We've helped hundreds of people retire. And we've never sent anyone back to work unless they wanted to. So, with retirement and the big step that you're taking when you stop work, you stop receiving a paycheck, there's going to be a huge temptation to focus on things you can't control. So what we want to talk about today is sort of dividing the line between what you can't control and what you can control.
What are some of the things, when you think of that you can't control, what are you thinking about?
Well, for example, what the market's doing, right? That's a big one. You can't control what happens in the market, right? The market is going to go up and it's going to go down. It always has. There's always been volatility, and you can't control that. You can't control what people say about the market.
Well, some people would suggest that maybe you can control some aspects of the market, whether you're in or out. I don't believe you can. All the research says you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing you can control, and we're going to talk about, really 4 levers today that you can control. One thing you can control is how much risk you're taking, right? So, a lot of people come to us and ask us, hey, I don't want to take any risk. What can I do? Well, that might not be an option for you, but you don't have to go crazy with the risk.
Risk is a funny thing, so I think that people understand risk only when their account value is dropping, right? So it's like, I don't really know risk until I see it, right? And there were these great congressional hearings many, many years ago where they were debating the differences between art and pornography. And some of the politicians said, well, I don't know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it, right? And so, the same is true with risk. You've got people who embrace risk when the market is moving higher and become very risk averse once the market heads lower.
Right.
So, we define risk as just the degree of uncertainty or variability of returns, volatility, that sort of thing. And you do have control over that.
Right. You have control in that you have the ability to design your portfolio with risk in mind. And you can look at, diversification as another way to kind of control your risk. If you're putting all your chips in one basket, right, and that basket explodes, so does your portfolio. But if you spread it out and, you're being careful about, understanding the kinds of investments you're holding and their risk profiles, that's one way you can stay in control of that.
I love the idea that of referring to the things that you can control as levers. Sort of think of, if you're flying an airplane, there's this saying that if you push in, houses get bigger. If you pull back, houses get smaller. So like that, and everything in life is about trade-offs, of course, but those levers we've found give people a sense of confidence that they have some control when they retire and are living on a fixed income and on investment income. One of the really cool levers that you have, of course, is timing. At what point are you going to decide to take your last paycheck? So the age that you retire, and everybody can define retirement differently, but timing is important. And there's an interesting statistic that we learned in teaching an adult and community education on retirement planning. Only 18% of the population says that they're going to retire, that they want to retire before they're 60 years old, right? In reality, 3 times that actually retire before they're 60. So, I mean, that's astounding. And it's not because they really wanted to in most cases. It's because something happened in life that forced them to. So, I mean, that's a lever that you have some control over. Of course, you're spending in retirement. You have some control over what that looks like too.
Right. So the first thing to do with that lever is figure out how much you're spending, because almost every retirement conversation that we have, there's a step involved where you have to figure out how much you're spending, because most people don't actually know. They have sort of a rough idea. I pay my credit card every month, and the balance is usually between $3,000 and $4,000 or something along those lines. But if you can get a really good sense of what you're spending, what expenses are going to go away, and what new expenses may arise, then that's the first step of pulling that lever.
Do you have to, I mean, in your opinion, Archie, do you have to go and back and look at your checkbook ledger, your credit card statements, all the times you hit the ATM, every time you send a Venmo? Is that what you're talking about, or something a little higher level?
Well, you can approach it a lot of different ways. I mean, we live in the 21st century. There's a lot of great technology out there, great apps to track your expenses, and it will look at that for you. You can do it the old school way, get all your receipts and credit card statements and bank statements together and add them up, take last 6 months, divide by 6, take the average and call it a day. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can keep it high level. I would say the important thing is learning to be dynamic and aware, so that the more you're disciplined and aware you are, the more control you have over that, and the better that lever actually works.
That lever is so important. I mean, the spending piece of this, and what we tend to find as people transition into retirement, oftentimes they spend more than they thought they were going to. I mean, there are a lot of things that when you are working that you haven't had time to do. Maybe there's some of the bucket list items. Maybe it's that trip. Maybe it's, you want to get that boat, or you want to play more golf. Golf's expensive, especially if you go through balls the way I do. But we find that people tend to spend a little bit more early in retirement, and then later in life, that spending starts to tail off right about the same time as healthcare costs increase. So the spending is a big piece of it. Another thing that we encounter, and so much of what we do, Archie, is about behavioral coaching. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when people end up with some sort of sudden money, maybe they inherit some money, or maybe they had some sort of a windfall, and they haven't had a lot of money up to that point. There's a sense we will see that people feel like, I deserve to spend some of this. And the word deserve is a really dangerous word when it comes to financial planning in the long term. At the end of the day, we don't deserve anything, really. And it's a numbers thing. So, yeah, you may deserve to take that big vacation, but if the numbers don't support it, you shouldn't do it. And we see from time to time people do, and we hear stories of people running out of money. It's just, that sense of entitlement is a really dangerous thing. But that spending lever is maybe the most effective of the levers.
It's also the most dangerous if you don't use it properly. You can save really effectively, and we'll get to that. That's the next lever. You can time your retirement really well, but if you don't have spending under control, you can really blow up a retirement plan very quickly. So that's where discipline comes in, and that's where probably some of the biggest value of what we do as financial planners comes in is coaching and accountability and helping with, managing behavior, because we've got habits and we have things we like and things that, we can afford while we're working and we're getting raises every year. But once you stop working, depending on how much you've saved and how long you work, it might not support your spending anymore. It might also support a greater level of spending. So,
well, let's talk about savings. If you're right at that transition point for retirement, is savings as important? It's hard to know. If you've got 5, 10, 15 years until you retire, saving is super important. You can have a big impact long term. And remember, if we do it right, we're gonna live in retirement, if we're relatively healthy, for maybe close to as long as we lived in our working life. If you look at your life sort of in, chunks, you've got your pre-work, childhood, education, then you have this period of work, and then you have a retired period, which is, at least the second longest of the three segments.
Right.
So saving is a super important lever.
Right. And the earlier you start too. If anyone's listening who's, early career, this is the most important time, because those dollars you save and invest now have the longest trajectory for compounding. And the earlier the better when it comes to young professionals.
Another legacy, another lever that I like to think about is what we call legacy. So it's kind of, what is it that you want to pass on to the next generation or to your charities? And that's a lever that you have. So if you make giving money to loved ones or a charity an important goal, that's something that you can adjust like a lever. So if you have a rough year or two in the markets, or life throws you some curves, you can adjust how much you're going to leave. I really like to build a legacy or an inheritance for someone else or a charity into a plan, because that gives us an additional buffer as well.
Right. Yeah, and ultimately, the things that can come along, those curveballs you were talking about, they're good to plan for ahead of time. You've got long-term care, you've got health care. These are issues that can come up later in life that can be really expensive. If you have that buffer and your plan, it works, with that buffer in place, ultimately, the most important thing is to take care of yourself. If legacy is important to you, it's also important to you, most likely, not to burden your children, grandchildren, heirs, with, costs like that. So if you have that legacy buffer, and another way to think of that is not just them receiving money, but if you needed a lot of care, them not receiving a burden, which is very valuable. So that lever is useful too.
So if just to sum it up, when you are planning for retirement, you retire and are retired, you've got a lot of control. And we like to think of those ways that you can control your financial life and your personal life as levers. They're trade-offs in life. More of one thing means less of another.
Right.
It's always true. These levers are a great way to think about it, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll see you next time. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.